The crystal champagne flutes clinked mockingly as I balanced them on my silver tray, weaving through the crowd of Silicon Valley's elite gathered at my sister Diana's new $20 million mansion. My mother's words from earlier still rang in my ears. Well, Rebecca, since you chose to waste your inheritance on that ridiculous research project, you might as well make yourself useful tonight. I caught my reflection in one of the floor-to-ceiling windows, my simple black dress a stark contrast to the designer gowns floating around me. 3 years ago, I'd stood among these people as an equal, the younger daughter of tech mogul James Anderson. Now I was serving them drinks at my sister's housewarming party. Becky, Diana's voice cut through the ambient chatter. Table 6 needs fresh champagne. Try not to drop anything. These glasses cost more than you make in a month. I bit back a retort, remembering why I was really here. Tonight wasn't about Diana's smug superiority or our mother's disappointment. It was about the leather-bound journal hidden in my car and the truth that would change everything. At least someone finally found their true calling, I heard Diana tell her group of socialite friends as I passed. I mean, after she blew through her trust fund on that crazy DNA research project, honestly, serving drinks suits her better. If they only knew that my crazy research had led me to discover our family's biggest secret, one that our parents had kept buried for 30 years. The invitation to Diana's housewarming party had arrived last week, its gold embossing and heavy cardstock screaming old money. The same day, I'd received a very different delivery, a package from a retired nurse in Boston, containing our grandmother's private journal and a letter that had shaken my world to its core. "Your sister seems to be enjoying herself," a quiet voice said beside me. I turned to find Thomas Chen, my grandmother's former attorney, watching the scene with thoughtful eyes. "Right on schedule." "She always does," I replied softly. "Everything ready?" He nodded almost imperceptibly. "The documents are all here. Are you sure you want to do this tonight? It will destroy them." I looked across the room at my family, Diana holding court in her designer gown, bragging about her new tech venture, funded entirely by her inheritance. Mom circulating through her carefully curated guest list, playing the perfect socialite. Dad standing with his business partners, probably orchestrating another $1 million deal. They looked perfect, untouchable, just like they had that day 3 years ago when they labeled me the family failure. 3 years earlier, DNA sequencing. Dad's voice filled his home office with disappointment. "You want to spend your inheritance on genetic research. It's important work," I insisted. "Grandmother's disease. There might be a genetic component we could identify, something that could help other families." "Your grandmother died because she was old," Mom cut in sharply. "This obsession isn't healthy, Rebecca. Diana is investing her inheritance in a proper business venture. Why can't you be more like your sister?" "Because I'm not Diana," I shot back. "And grandmother's death wasn't that simple. If you just listen." "Enough." Dad slammed his hand on his mahogany desk. "This discussion is over. Either invest your inheritance responsibly or don't come crying to us when you've wasted it all." I chose the research. They chose to write me off. Present day. "Mrs. Anderson." Thomas's voice pulled me back to the present. "Your daughter Diana's success is remarkable. She must have inherited your late mother-in-law's business acumen." Mom's perfectly maintained smile faltered slightly. Oh, Margaret hardly had any head for business. She was more interested in her charity work and medical research. "Medical research?" Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Like your younger daughter?" Before Mom could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. An elderly woman had arrived, her silver hair elegant against her simple but expensive suit. Several guests gasped in recognition. "Is that?" Diana hurried over. "Dr. Sarah Chen, the genetic researcher?" I smiled slightly, right on cue. "I apologize for crashing your lovely party," Dr. Chen said, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "But I'm looking for Rebecca Anderson. I believe she has something that belongs to me." All eyes turned to me as I set down my tray of champagne glasses. "Actually, Dr. Chen," I said clearly, "I believe what I have belongs to all of us." Mom's face had gone pale. "Rebecca, what is this about?" I pulled out grandmother's journal, its worn leather familiar under my fingers. "It's about the truth, Mom. About why grandmother really died. About the Anderson family's biggest secret." Dad stepped forward, his face darkening. Whatever you think you know. I know everything, I cut him off. About the experimental treatment trials in 1992. About the cover-up. About my real mother. The crystal champagne glass slipped from Diana's hand, shattering on the marble floor. I opened the journal to its last entry, my voice steady as I began to read. My dearest granddaughter Rebecca, if you're reading this, then you finally discovered what your father has tried so hard to hide. The truth about your birth, about your real mother, and about why I've left you the key to everything. The room erupted in chaos as I continued reading. 30 years of carefully constructed lies were about to unravel, and this was just the beginning. The words from grandmother's journal hung in the air like smoke, suffocating in their implications. Diana was the first to recover, her perfectly glossed lips curling into a sneer. This is ridiculous, she spat. Another one of your desperate attempts for attention. First the DNA research, now this. But our mother's face told a different story. She'd sunk into the nearest chair, her usual poise shattered. James, she whispered to our father, she found Margaret's journal. Dad's attempt at damage control was immediate. I apologize, everyone, he announced to the stunned party guests. My daughter has been struggling with personal issues. Perhaps we should. Perhaps, Dr. Sarah Chen's voice cut through his smoothly. We should discuss the clinical trials at Boston Memorial Hospital in 1992. The ones you helped cover up, Mr. Anderson. The color drained from Dad's face. I continued reading from the journal. James will tell you it was an accident, that Sarah Chen's death during the experimental treatment was unavoidable. He'll never admit that he altered the trial data, buried the evidence that could have saved others. He'll never tell you that Sarah was more than just a researcher, she was your mother. Stop this nonsense immediately, Dad thundered, but his usual authority was cracked by panic. Thomas Chen stepped forward, removing documents from his briefcase. I have here the original trial records, DNA test results, and a letter from Margaret Anderson detailing everything. Your grandmother was quite thorough, Rebecca. The story spilled out like blood from a long festering wound. Sarah Chen, a brilliant genetic researcher, had been working on revolutionary treatment protocols when she discovered she was pregnant. My father, then a rising pharmaceutical executive, had been funding her research and having an affair with her. When the trial results showed dangerous side effects, Dad had buried the reports to protect his company's stock price. Sarah had threatened to expose everything. 3 days later, she died during a routine procedure, leaving behind a newborn baby. Me. Grandmother knew, I said quietly, watching my father's empire of lies crumble. She found out everything while investigating the trial deaths, but instead of exposing you, she made a deal. She'd stay quiet if you adopted her granddaughter. Me? Diana's face had turned an interesting shade of green. No, this isn't, we're not. Not what, Diana? Not actually sisters. That's right, and grandmother's fortune, the one you've been so proudly spending, it was never meant for you. Thomas Chen produced another document, Margaret Anderson's real will written before her death. She left everything to Rebecca, Sarah Chen's daughter and her only biological grandchild. The room erupted in chaos. Mom had started sobbing, decades of perfectly maintained secrets dissolving in her expensive mascara. Diana was screaming about lawyers and rights. But Dad just stood there, finally facing the truth he'd buried for 30 years. Why now? He asked hoarsely. Why like this? I thought about the years of feeling like an outsider in my own family, of being compared to Diana and found wanting, of being mocked for my interest in genetic research, the same passion that had driven my real mother. Because lies have a way of poisoning everything they touch, I replied. Look around, Dad. This mansion, Diana's company, your perfect family image, it's all built on my mother's death. I never meant, he began, but I cut him off. To fall in love with her? To choose your company's profits over her life? To make her child feel like a failure for following in her footsteps? Dr. Chen stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. Sarah would be proud of you, she said softly. You have her brilliance, her determination to find the truth. Diana, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly lunged for the documents in Thomas's hands. This isn't fair. That money is mine. I've already spent millions. I finished for her. Yes, I know. The mansion, the cars, the startup, all funded by the inheritance that was rightfully mine. Don't worry, sister dear. You can keep this house. I can? Consider it severance pay, but the family company? Grandmother's pharmaceutical patents? Those revert to me, effective immediately. Dad's business partners had started edging toward the door, no doubt already calculating how this scandal would affect their deals. Mom was still crying, 30 years of lies finally catching up with her. What are you going to do? Dad asked, his voice small. I looked around the mansion's grand foyer, at the life my sister had built with stolen money, at the family that had been built on deception. I'm going to do what my mother wanted to do 30 years ago. Use our resources to help people, not profit from their suffering. Starting with reopening her research. The next few hours were a blur of lawyers, reporters, and shell-shocked party guests making hasty exits. By midnight, Deanna's perfect housewarming had become the scandal of Silicon Valley. I stood in the garden, looking up at the stars, when Dr. Chen found me. Your mother used to do this, she said quietly. Stargaze when she needed to think. You're so like her. Tell me about her, please. As she began to speak, sharing memories of the mother I never knew, I felt something shift inside me. The anger, the hurt, the need for revenge. It all melted away, replaced by something else. Purpose. 1 week later, the Anderson Pharmaceutical sign was being replaced with a new one. Chen Anderson Research Institute. Inside, my mother's old lab was being renovated, updated with modern equipment, but keeping her original research notes carefully preserved. Deanna had checked into a wellness retreat, her perfect world shattered by the truth. Mom had filed for divorce, finally free from decades of maintaining Dad's lies. And Dad was facing investigations into the 1992 trials, his carefully constructed empire crumbling. But this story isn't about their fall. It's about building something new from the ashes of lies. About a daughter discovering her true inheritance, not money or mansions, but a legacy of brilliant research and unwavering pursuit of truth. As I write this from my mother's old office, I can see her face in the photos Dr. Chen shared with me. The same determined set of her jaw, the same passionate gleam in her eyes when discussing her work. I may have served drinks at my sister's party, but I was serving something else too. Justice, truth, and the promise I made to 2 remarkable women, my mother and my grandmother. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying what others have built, but in building what they tried to prevent. My mother's research continues through me, and this time, no one will bury the truth.